Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. It has been a great little while since I last made a video, but I am back and ready to give you all an update and share some of the things that have been going on the last month or so. Okay, so last time I did an update, it was probably February or so, end of January, beginning of February, that I was moving to step down on the steroid that I was on, basically cutting the dose in half from 40 milligrams down to 20. There's a lot of horrible side effects with taking steroids, and now that I'm finally at a point where I'm on infusion treatments regularly, those seem to really be helping, and we're at a point now where I need to start to get off of the steroid. That was the last update I provided. So about a week or so after I stepped down on the steroid, I started to feel some kind of weird symptoms. I started to notice I was feeling super tired, which I figured that was probably just, normal, standard. Your body, steroids give you a lot of energy, and now I'm taking some of that away, so that makes sense. But the main thing that was really concerning for me was that I started to feel really lightheaded, dizzy, and really just kind of like I might faint. The best way I knew to describe it was at my job. I work a desk job, so I would be sitting at my desk for an hour or so, and then by the time I would get up to go run an errand or run to the restroom, by the time I got to wherever I was going, so maybe 10 or 20 seconds to wherever I was walking to, I would get to the point where it all of a sudden hit me that I felt like my ears were ringing, and I kind of had to brace myself that I might faint. And it was really scary, and I couldn't tell what was the matter. I was trying to think, am I eating something differently, or am I dehydrated? Maybe I'm not drinking enough. No, that can't be it, because I'm drinking way more water than I ever have. So I'm just trying to rack my brain on what might be going on. And so basically from there, we have a lot of nurses in our family, and so I was just kind of having a conversation with one of our family members, and she took my blood pressure and said, your blood pressure is a little elevated, with everything else you have going on, maybe a good idea just to, check in with your primary care doctor, see what's going on, because those symptoms you're having are not normal. So I made an appointment with my primary care doctor to check in with her just to see what was going on with those symptoms. She came in, saw me, took my temperature, the normal drill. And then after hearing kind of everything that was going on, she asked the medical assistant to do basically a blood pressure test. And so she took my blood pressure, I don't know what it's called, but she took my blood pressure when I was laying down, when I was sitting up, and then when I was standing up. And so when I was laying and sitting, my blood pressure was pretty normal. It was like 125, 130 over like 85 or 90, so pretty normal. But then in the 5 seconds or so it took me to get down off of the table in the office to standing on the floor, it would drop by like 10 or 20 points. We did this a couple times just to see maybe if it was a fluke thing or if it was an error on the machine, but we did it a couple times, and it happened every time where my blood pressure would drop to like 105, 110 over 70 something. So we knew something weird was going on with my blood pressure, couldn't figure out why, so the medical assistant left, doctor came back in. The symptoms might be caused by something called adrenal insufficiency. So basically what she was thinking is that the adrenal insufficiency could have been caused by the reduction in the steroids. Basically, your adrenal glands help to make everything kind of run stable within your body, homeostasis, making sure everything's working the way it should. And when your body becomes dependent on a type of, synthetic drug or synthetic, whatever it is, basically the steroid that I was taking, now my body's become dependent on it, and my adrenal glands aren't producing, I think it's cortisol is one of the things we discussed, but basically not producing what they should to keep things running smoothly in my body, which is why I was having, or she thought was having, the symptoms of the lightheadedness, the low blood pressure when I stood up. Orthostatic hypotension is what she was calling it. But basically just a fancy way to say that you have like postural low blood pressure, that when you go from sitting or laying to standing, that your blood pressure drops. So now that we kind of had a little bit of information on what it was or what it might be, I asked her, how do we know for sure, number one, that this is what this is, and number two, if it is what it is, how do we get this resolved? So I went in for that appointment on like a Wednesday or a Thursday, and she said, I'm gonna call in a couple tests for you to have done. One of those was to have blood work, so that's pretty normal. It seems like they want to do blood work for everything, so we did blood work. And the other thing was to have a cortisol test done. So like I said, that appointment was on a Wednesday or Thursday. I went Friday on my way into work and had blood work done. I was under the assumption, and so was the doctor, that the other tests could be done at the lab that's not far from my house. She said, the individual at the lab said, no, it can't be, and she referred me to the cancer center, which is connected to a hospital, bigger hospital in our area, and told me that I had to go there to have the test done. So I got in touch with them, scheduled the test. She said that it was something I had to fast for, and I needed to expect to be there for several hours. And so obviously I couldn't do that on my way into work. So I scheduled that that was a Friday, scheduled that for a following Saturday morning. So I got up, went to the cancer center, went to go have that test done, and oh man, that was a horrible experience. I've talked in other videos about the fact that I am a hard stick, and that generally when I go in to have an IV run, blood work's usually not so bad, but generally when I go to have an IV run, they have a hard time getting a good vein, and I know it's something to be expected. But this was a really rough experience, which really surprised me, because generally the people at that office, they're cancer patients coming in, getting their medication through an IV. Maybe it's just me, maybe I have horrible veins, but it was really rough. So either way, basically what I had done was a test where they run an IV, they injected me just running saline through for a little while, and then it was basically they were putting things in and then taking blood out. So they took some blood at the beginning, I guess, to test my base levels of where my cortisol levels were at that point. And then a half an hour later, so they injected me with something, I don't know what it was, something, and they wanted to see how my body would react to it. And then like 10-15 minutes later would come and take more blood work, and we did that 2 or 3 times. So in total I was there several hours. The worst part was getting the IV run in the beginning, and then towards the end, the last time she was trying to get blood work, or trying to get blood out of the IV, which this is probably too much information, but it stopped, basically that vein stopped giving blood. So hopefully, well, we were keeping our fingers crossed that blood that she got out of the IV the last time would be enough to serve whatever purpose it needed to serve for whatever test they were running on it. So basically after being there several hours, I left, and that was the end of that cortisol test. So after I had those tests done, they told me, that was a Saturday, they told me the results would likely be ready Monday or Tuesday for my doctor. I heard from my doctor on Monday, and she said, based on the information that she received, based on the test results, that she was feeling very strongly that it was what we had discussed, the adrenal insufficiency, and that at this point to discuss how to get the issue resolved and how to discuss making sure that I no longer had the symptoms and that I was safely tapering down from the steroid to eventually be off of this medication altogether, that I needed to be referred to an endocrinologist, basically a specialist that focuses on hormones and your endocrine system, that I need to be referred to a specialist from here. So that was, like I said, a Monday or a Tuesday. That Tuesday I had already scheduled my 3rd round of my infusion treatment of the Remicade medication that I am taking. So that was another time that I had to go in within 3 or 4 days and have another IV run. So that was a little rough just because they had used pretty much all of my good veins up until that point. So that was interesting. And I'm going to make a separate video about my infusion treatments up until this point and how those experiences are going. But I had an appointment that day, and one thing, just kind of as a side note that I wanted to mention, was that both at the cancer center and at my infusion appointment, the nurses there had both actually mentioned something to me with regard to being a hard stick and trying to get an IV run, that I might look into getting something called a Cath. And I had no idea what on earth they were talking about, but basically what it is it's something that it's a portable catheter, I guess is what it stands for. But basically what it is it's a small little device that goes into your chest, and it goes into the veins, arteries that go into your heart. Basically what it is it's something that goes under your skin that since I am such a hard stick, that basically what it would give them the opportunity to do is administer all of my medication that goes through an IV, and any blood work that I would need done would all come in and out of the catheter rather than having to try to find a vein. So in essence, it sounded really cool because it seemed like, oh my gosh, if I'm going to continue to have these things done, I'm constantly having blood work, I'm constantly having medication administered through an IV. It's exhausting, it's frustrating, it's painful. If I could have something that's just in there all the time, apparently a lot of cancer patients use that because a lot of the chemo is done through an IV, and especially if they're having the medication done so often, that it's not a bad idea if you think about it in theory. But yeah, so both of them had mentioned that. At this point, I looked into it. I actually scheduled a consultation with a doctor's office to discuss it, but I think it just is a little bit invasive for me right now. At least I know that it's something that I can keep in the back of my mind, that if it does get really bad, but I think it was just a really bad couple of days, really bad couple of weeks with a lot of tests that needed to be run and a lot of things happening. So I don't think I'm at a point now where I want to move forward with the Cath, but at least I know it's something that I can fall back on if I decide at some point that it gets too much, and I know at least it's an option. So after I had my infusion appointment, I had scheduled the appointment with the endocrinologist. They couldn't get me in for about a week or so. So I had scheduled that appointment with them and was just kind of waiting for that appointment to get here. And I ended up catching a respiratory virus right in the middle of all this other stuff going on. I think I've mentioned this in past videos, but the medication that I'm on, the Remicade treatment, really knocks out your immune system. So that was one thing that I really tried to do a good job of, making sure I'm washing my hands more, make sure I'm using hand sanitizer, wiping things down, especially when I'm in an environment where there's a lot of people kind of coming and going. So yeah, that was something that was just kind of thrown in the mix. So I did see my primary care doctor in the middle of all of this to see if I could get anything for the respiratory virus, and really it was something that just needed to run its course. But that following weekend, it really knocked me on my behind. I was feeling absolutely terrible, couldn't hardly swallow, really, really stuffy. So that's beside the point, but that was another thing kind of medical related that was going on during that time. So after I got over the respiratory virus, I had all the blood work and tests and everything behind me, I was looking forward to the endocrinologist appointment to get an idea on what she had to say. So I'm actually going to make a part 2 of this video to kind of explain what happened with my appointment with her and kind of what my next steps are for the steroid and all of my medication from here. So this video is already kind of getting long, so thank you guys so much for watching. Appreciate your love and support. Like I said, I'm going to make a part 2, so stay tuned for that, and I'll see you in my next video.